We're all together. Howdy, y'all. We're here with Luciano Gonzalez from Luciano's Logic and also with some straw guy. I think he's like a vagabond.
I'm Batman.
He's a vigilante.
Batman came to discuss capitalism with us. What could possibly go wrong?
Absolutely nothing. This is going to be perfect, the best, believe me.
Batman likes capitalism.
Oh no, he's one of those.
The Joker hates capitalism.
I never thought I'd agree with, the Joker, but here we are.
It's true. It's like chaos.
The Joker's a communist bastard.
Hey, some people just want to watch the world burn.
I'm Batman.
So, y'all, we're here to obviously talk about capitalism. So, yay.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
What are your thoughts on capitalism other than you like capitalism, Luciano?
So I think that capitalism has real advantages that are actually worth considering, but I don't necessarily believe that those benefits and advantages are unique to capitalism. And I think that, like all ideas, that we as humanists should be at the forefront of challenging tradition, challenging mindless belief in something, and figuring out how to make things better. So I think that this discussion shouldn't be rooted in the idea that we should abolish capitalism, but more in the idea that we should take what we can from capitalism and then figure out how to rein in the worst parts of it.
Sounds good, like a balance. So I did have a question.
Hold on. You would take the best and leave the worst.
Yeah.
You know what that's called?
What is it?
Capitalism.
You can't define a word with the word, Luciano.
We are totally not going in circles.
I would just like to say that obviously altruism is the most immoral thing that anyone can do in life. And greed is the defining factor of all of our lives that we should strive for. Greed is good, greed is moral, and greed will get you to heaven.
Well, all that really is the most moral thing is to make profit.
Exactly.
If you care about yourself and you're a reasonable person.
Yeah. Sell your grandma if you can.
We should all live in a society where the market makes the rules. There's nothing possibly wrong with putting a price on everything and selling it for the highest possible price.
What else is freedom? That's freedom.
Freedom.
So the basic definition of capitalism is the one that we're going to be using today for this discussion. And obviously we can come back at a later point and we can have a more specific discussion about more specialized definitions. But for those of you who don't know, capitalism is generally defined as an economic and political system where private owners control or greatly influence a country or region's trade and industry for profit instead of allowing those areas to be controlled by the government.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's all we got for tonight. Good night, everybody.
What brought to you by Definitions with Iowan, Snarky, and Luciano.
Yeah. It's been a great stream. The best stream.
So basically put, okay. And you have to kind of differentiate into different forms of capitalism, because there is unfettered, unregulated capitalism. And then there's also capitalism that has some regulation, enough to keep things going smoothly and provide for a safe and secure market for competition to breed and thrive. And none of us here are Randian libertarians, so fuck the unfettered. We're talking about the good kind.
Yeah. And for the record, the most common economic and political system in the world is some variation of capitalism, generally mixed capitalism, which is also known as a mixed economy, where the market is generally free to do what it wants, but there is like a certain level of government regulations to make sure the government doesn't to make sure the market doesn't take everyone's money and then poison the water.
Yeah, because they will. If they'll get them a quick buck, they will.
The government would never poison anyone's water, Flint, Michigan. And aging water pipes pretty much everywhere. But no, you're correct. Mixed economies are economies that tend to run well. In terms of capitalism and the free market should be engaging in commodities, in technology, things like that, things that you're going to go out and purchase that's going to enhance your life. Where most of the world has figured this out, capitalism should not be in charge of, say, healthcare,
schooling,
prisons. Exactly, prisons, things that actually affect your ability to survive should not be a capitalistic system. I can't remember. There's a movie where people have to purchase time.
Oh my God.
In order to survive. Like they have to purchase time.
I've seen the was it the Lorax?
No, it's not the Lorax.
I've seen it though.
Like, do you think I would say what is going on here?
Isn't the Lorax like isn't that a Dr. Seuss book?
Yes, it's a Dr. Seuss book. Yeah, what's wrong with for-profit prisons? If your bottom line is affected by the amount of people that you have and keep in prison, chances are you're not going to be running a rehabilitation.
Yeah, you're incentivized to keep as many prisoners there and gain as many prisoners per whatever time period in order to get profit.
Yeah, it's a Doctor Who episode where they buy oxygen so that they can survive. Yeah, it's that would be a horrible capitalistic system. Like, imagine if you were sick one week and you couldn't go to work and you're like, I can't afford oxygen. I guess I'm going to breathe once every 10 times I normally would have.
Oh, can you imagine Uber oxygen where they like...
Oh, God.
Uber everything.
What about the use of capitalism in response to emergency situations as a kind of rationing? I guess I would have to, like, I'm not exactly sure.
I know some representatives and senators of Texas that would agree with that.
Well, I'm not sure what emotionally mimetic psychopath is saying there. Like, I can see situations where that would be necessary. Not necessarily capitalist. That would be more, you're turning more to a socialist system if you're having to ration in an emergency situation.
Right.
And I don't think like, hey, I've got $50. Okay, well, you get, a box of ramen. Hey, I've got $200. Well, you get to eat at this table and whatever you want while the emergency plays out. That doesn't make sense.
That, like, if they were to privatize like the police station.
Oh, well, there have been private fire departments.
Yeah.
And there are units that effectively operate as private police. Like if you have a security guard, if you have a mall officer, like not every mall officer is like this, but a lot of mall officers are private security, and that's effectively private police.
Yeah.
Yay, malls. I love the mall.
Yeah, the emergency capitalism, I don't know. I'm referring to people who sell water to rich people at exorbitant prices for water so that they can get profit while free water to the poor.
So
Robin Hooding water.
Oh, okay. So you're saying, okay, so if the situation is people need... See, I don't know how that works because I know in, say, California or something where you have droughts, oftentimes the rich people will pay like a luxury fee in order to keep their lawns green and stuff. But I don't.
They're talking about price gouging, it seems, because we had an issue like that whenever a hurricane would hit. Ice would be like $9 a bag.
Well, but they said it would be free to the poor, but only they would sell it to the rich.
Oh, I don't know.
So I don't know of any situations in which this has happened.
I don't know.
Perhaps if they could point out to me where that's happened. I'm not certain of any situation where that's actually occurred.
Yeah, that might be helpful.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the what is the best aspect of capitalism in y'all's opinion?
Money.
Money.
Stuff.
I like things.
Yes, things.
I also like things.
Books.
I wonder if you guys caught that reference, but it was very vague. But it was to a person we've talked about before, so possibly. But in my opinion, one of the best things about capitalism is oftentimes the concept of private property, which kind of sucks because that's not a distinctly capitalistic idea. In fact, most existing systems of governance and most existing political and economic systems account for private property. But that is a good thing in capitalism. I like the idea of private property, provided someone can't have too much private property that no one else has any land.
I like being able to say, "Y'all get out of my house."
Yeah. Okay, so what's the best part about capitalism to me right now? Capitalism does spurn entrepreneurship. It spurns innovation. Like I would wish that we could get to a time where it's like Star Trek, where people just do good things because it's the good thing to do.
Right.
But at the same time, the incentive of money and a better lifestyle gives people an incentive to go out and do more. Like the arts as well benefits under capitalism.
Agreed.
And poetry and all of what was the greatest Soviet poem that you've ever heard? I don't know. My potato rotted today and now I starve.
Oh, that got dark.
A haiku by a Soviet.
Wow. So basically, I mean, you're talking about raising the standards of living for places of the world that might not otherwise have it, right?
Oh yeah, and you can see it in our own society as well. I know that our current whatever you would call it that lives in the White House pretends to hate China. But as soon as China started opening up to capitalism, our lives in the US got a lot better. And the reason is, once you had this new market where we could sell our goods, we had more money and the cost of living went down. Now, there are certain things that did not go down. And I'm also talking about adjusting it for inflation, because a lot of times people will forget that. I'm going to go on a tangent now. Okay, so you know how your grandfather will always talk to you about how when he was a kid, he could pay a penny for a candy bar?
Yep.
Well, see, back then, like the average wage was like $3 or sometimes even $1 a day. And so that candy bar, when you were getting paid $1, is far more expensive than a candy bar today, when your take home for a day is generally around $100.
Yeah, my grandparents lived during the Depression, and so they usually, like, my granny worked farm work, and she got half a penny a bushel.
Yeah,
like cotton and stuff.
And it's like if we didn't, with adjusting for inflation, the Atari 2600, which one of the early consoles, if it were to release today, it would cost, I think it's somewhere around $1,000.
Ooh.
And so, like, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One weren't $1,000. They're much cheaper now than they would have been 30 years ago. Less candy bars being made back then. Yeah, that's definitely a part of it too, but a lot of it is inflation. Which inflation is, this is such a tough topic to talk about because there's so many different facets of capitalism.
Especially when you're looking at a global economy. It gets all that more complex.
Like, capitalism isn't something that you can look at and go, capitalism good or capitalism bad. It's like capitalism gray, lack of capitalism gray.
Different shades of gray, but gray nonetheless.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of capitalism,
it's just like the perfect system. If the perfect system were to exist, you would have a free market economy with enough regulation that allows everyone to thrive, that doesn't allow for monopolies, that prevents over competition as well, and also has social safeties in effect for health and education and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's got to be oversight and oversight on the oversight too. I mean,
yeah.
There's a lot of say, like, for example, what was it, Wells Fargo, who was really ripping people off, and they had a committee in place that held them accountable for that. So yeah, I think it's very important that we have regulations set in place. So we've kind of gone over, some of the positive things about capitalism. What are some of the negatives?
Poverty.
So, I'm going to say that there are two huge negatives to capitalism, and these by no means are, once again, unique to capitalism, but they're definitely more present in capitalism than they would be in other systems. One of the big ones is that the for-profit motive incentivizes having as few workers as possible. Because if you have fewer workers, then you can spread the profits much higher to the people who are in the workforce. But since profit generally equates to success and to respect and to like the ability to live a good life, you are incentivized to push out workers whenever you have the possibility.
Oh, yeah.
Wait a second. See, the U.S. has this great system where we tax corporations at a high rate of any of their income so that they hire workers and build factories so they can cut that off of their income and put it back into their business. It's worked for up until the 1980s. And then Reagan fucked us.
How did he do that?
Well, see, he took a 70% corporate income tax rate and cut it to 35%.
Wow.
And see, here's the deal. What Luciano just said is unfettered capitalism does not breed job growth. It does not, when people see their bank accounts and go, okay, so if I only hire this amount of people and I'm able to take this much home and they're not going to tax me on it all that much, I'm not going to hire any more people.
Right. And plus, too, if you look at innovation and you look at the technology is moving a lot faster than we can really keep up with the inflation of. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
While they might produce jobs initially, after a while, those jobs will fade. So we're really looking at an economy that yo-yos quite often.
And we're also entering an economy that is still grappling with automation. Automation is not going to get better. It's going to get better, which means it's going to take more and more jobs.
Yep.
And we should actually want that. Here's the deal. We don't have to work a 40-hour work week. Why do we work a 40-hour work week? Because we work a 40-hour work week. That's the only reason.
Here we are in the circles again.
Kind of a circular system, the more you talk about it.
There is absolutely no reason why we work a 40-hour work week, other than people in the past worked a 40-hour work week. There is no reason. How will you get money? We would work less hours
and get paid more.
We would also have something that I would like to see, basic.
You're a proponent of universal basic income? I didn't know that.
Universal basic income, yes.
Yay!
That's neat. I did not know that.
I think that we should get to a point where people do not have to worry about paying for their health care. I think we should get to a point where people are only worrying about paying for things that make their life better. If that makes sense. Like if FDR had a second Bill of Rights that he talked about. It didn't go through. He died before it. No, it's not. Yeah, it is FDR. Yeah. And in it was people should have the right to shelter. People should have the right to a good living. People should have a right to food. There should not be a situation where people are going hungry and dying from hunger in today's world.
Right, exactly.
People are going hungry and dying because we're allowing people to go hungry and die.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like it just there's a utopian idea that I would like to see happen. I don't think it'll ever happen in my life, but I think we have to get away from the idea of people working just to survive and get to an idea of people working to thrive.
Oh, I love that. I'm just you're getting some tonight.
Just so you know, you should probably run for office. And also, I say that to a lot of people, but it's true. Like even when I disagree with people, I often tell them it's like, hey, you should run for office because they should. Like, one, running for office should be a normal thing. It really shouldn't be this gargantuan fucking monster of a task. Also, sorry for cussing, but it shouldn't be a big deal to run for office. Honestly, it should be normal for people to be like, hey, I have ideas about how the system works. I want to test these ideas out and I want to build a movement. I should run for office.
But you have to have money to run for office.
It's almost like the system's viciously circular and only helps the people who are already wealthy.
Yeah, and you have to run for office to get money.
So it's being asked, how would we pay for this? So here's the deal. When you raise the standard of living for your people, certain things go down. Crime goes down. And we should be working toward, if crime goes down, you don't have as much of a need for a prison system. We could cut a huge amount of money out of our state budgets if we stopped sending low-level drug offenders to prison. That would be huge amounts. There are many different things that we could do. I'm not standing here saying, I mean, the number one thing is we need to raise the fucking corporate income tax. We have a really stupid income tax system, and I'm an accountant. Our income tax system is known as a regressive income tax system. What that means is the lower your income, the more you're paying.
Yep. That's such an important thing that so many people are unaware of. I wrote about the marginalized tax system the other day because people were really dumb about AOC's proposal. And people, like, when they were criticizing it, they left out really important parts of it, like the fact that she wanted to create new tax brackets, which is a huge necessity because someone who's making $500,000 does not have the same economic impact as someone who's making $5 million a year, but the income tax system treats them the same. And that's a really big issue, because for people who are making $1 million a year or more, they don't need, you don't need that much money in a year. That's a big part of this. One of the common criticisms of capitalism that I hear from people who are like hard anti-capitalists, and I don't know if this applies to anyone in the chat, I am interested if there are people in the chat who agree with this idea, is that like in a capitalist system, you are able to become a billionaire. And there are people who say that that in and of itself is evil. I don't know if I agree with that idea, but I can understand why it is that they have this position, because you are amassing an ungodly amount of wealth, which is funny coming from an atheist. But like, it's true. There is no way on earth you are going to need this much money. Even if you're making $1 million a year, there's no way on earth you need that much money.
No.
Yeah.
And that's where that's where it becomes a regressive system, which I want to point out a little more on this. So let's say that you're a person who makes 50 grand a year, and you pay 10% of that in tax. So 10% of 50 grand is $5,000. Now, $5,000 is going to affect a person who pays or who has 50 grand a year far more than, let's say, it's 10% or 20% on someone that has $5 million. They're going to have much more disposable income even after taxation. And so that's it. It's hurting the poor more than it hurts the rich.
Of course.
And so, I mean, I'm not quite in line with the idea that just because we have billionaires makes it immoral. I do kind of like the idea of a maximum wage. Just because if we're going to have a minimum wage, then I think we should have a ceiling as well.
That makes sense to me.
Because that quells some of the inequality.
So we've also been asked, what is it that governments do that restricts what the people can do? Well, for one thing, slowly chipping away at our representation in terms of, like I said, being able to run a campaign. It costs a lot of money. If you don't have money, you can't run a campaign. If you aren't able to get funding from, say, really large donors who can sometimes and often do donate anonymously, it gets complicated. You have people that are wanting to keep the tax laws muddied and murky, and they want to be able to still hold their tax havens in various countries.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, like I said, this is an incredibly broad and nuanced topic. There are so many different facets that go into this. The main negative when it comes to capitalism, in my mind, is you can't have capitalism without a class system.
right.
There has to be haves and have-nots in a capitalist system, but it's what should the haves and have-nots be? Like, should it be healthcare? I don't think it should be healthcare.
No, I don't think it should be housing either. I don't think it should be education.
No, it shouldn't be education. I don't think, like, I think you could have it in housing, but it would be. How do I want to, because it's not necessarily you would have a right. Unfettered capitalism is what has caused our housing situation today. So it's really hard to talk about.
Yeah.
Housing prices and land prices are insanely out of control because of unfettered capitalism.
Yeah, they wanted to get rich really quick.
And actually, it's a lot of foreign millionaires and billionaires will buy land in the U.S. in order to have that money in the U.S.
Tied up.
And off of their shore. It's tied up in that land, which then increases. Like if someone says, okay, well, I'm going to buy this piece of land. You're selling it for $1 million. I'm going to buy it for $3 million to put that money into it or whatever. I'm going to buy for over the market value. Well, then that skyrockets the market value. And causes issues. It's such a
well, in terms of what I mean by housing is access to loans, a lot of different demographics. Let's just put it that way.
Loans are also a bad thing about capitalism. Just
I thought you were Batman and you were like all for capitalism and you had nothing to say about it whatsoever.
I'm going back to Batman.
No, so okay. So let me talk about some of the things that you could do to help some of these. Okay, so raise the corporate tax rate.
Yes.
Raise the estate tax a great deal. And that's what people call the death tax, and that's a stupid thing to call it. So basically, what the death tax or the estate tax is, right now, I believe it's $9 million that you can leave to your children and your grandchildren. $9 million. Now, I know what you're thinking. How are they going to survive on $9 million? That doesn't get taxed. That doesn't get touched. That's good. So $9 million. And then after that, there's the estate tax. So if you don't have $9 million and you voted for someone because they were going to repeal the death tax, you're a moron. I'm sorry, but you you got to stop letting politicians. It's so weird that the Republicans are all about fucking money, and the poor are the ones that vote for them. You're not going to be rich. I'm sorry. You're not going to be rich. It's not going to happen. The American dream has never really been there for the majority of people. The majority of people that have been born and raised in the U.S. have died in the same social status that they were born into.
Well, my pastor told me the Republicans love me because they
thought he was an idiot.
Also, I'm going to talk about something that's going on in the comment section right now. I'm having a discussion, and it's worth pointing out. The idea that we shouldn't tax churches because that would make it hard to argue for separation of church and state is not reflective of reality. No. Because churches take advantage of services provided by the public. The reality is, and here's the thing, it's entirely possible. Like, I can understand why this point of view is common, and it is. I've had discussions with people about this all the time. But the reality is, if there's a fire in a church, they're going to call the fire department.
Yeah.
If someone has a heart attack in a church, unless it's a church with a faith healer, the priest isn't going to come and try to pull some like Lazarus type nonsense and resurrect the person. Like, they're going to call an ambulance, which is fine and good, but that's the real reason why it is that churches should not be churches shouldn't be tax exempt. Churches should pay taxes. That's just the way it is. And that's a perfectly reasonable position to hold.
And right now, churches, the whole tax situation from churches is a one-way street. Churches don't pay tax, but churches are political as hell.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You think I was joking when I said my pastor told me to vote Republican?
I'm sure you weren't.
Look, they'll do it on TV now.
Yeah.
They're very, very bold about it. Jesus sent Donald Trump here because I said so.
The problem, it's religious people would take advantage for political, but they already do. What did Donald Trump do to win over evangelicals? He went to a fucking church and said 2 Corinthians, and people were like, oh.
And also, like, churches can already legally talk politics without paying taxes. People have this idea that if you go into a church and someone says, hey, here's a policy, that church is going to be taxed. That's not the way the current system works. The current system works in a way, and I'm not saying, like, I'm saying this because I write about this a whole lot. It was part of my job when I was working over at American Atheist. It was one of the things that I helped them write about, but they had people who knew a whole lot more about it than I did. I just like helped edit it and stuff. But like right now, the way the current system works is if a pastor is like, hey, vote for this person, that's a violation of the Johnson Amendment.
Yep.
But churches can still be like, hey, abortion bad and immigrants bad, and they're not taxed.
Yeah, right. The only thing, when I was a minister, the only thing that I could not do in my church was say, I want you to vote for Mitt Romney.
Yep.
I could say, you know, I sure do like that Mitt Romney guy. He's anti-abortion and pro-immigration, and I really think he's a strong Christian. And I think that, I really think he has a good walk with the Lord. And I can't tell you, I can't say who to vote for, but I'm just thinking Mitt Romney is a good, godly man.
Well, Mitt Romney did say that the Lord told him to run.
Yeah. I could go all the way up to that point and just not say, you can't go vote for this person or you can't vote for this one. As long as I didn't cross that line, I was okay. And we actually have churches that are crossing that line. And guess what? Nothing happens because the government doesn't want, there's no Congress people out there that want to go and attack churches.
No.
And it wouldn't be attack. It would just be enforcing the law, but it would be seen as an attack.
Of course, because persecution complex.
Yeah.
I need my persecution.
We have such a fucking
okay. And how does this tie into capitalism though? Because there is a connection to why this is a thing, don't you think?
So this ties into profit motive, which I would argue is above and beyond the worst part of capitalism. And like in the live stream that that first motivated this particular talk, last week's live stream on government shutdowns over on my channel, there was a part towards the end where I tied this all into capitalism, and I talked a little bit about like my thoughts on capitalism. And I mostly focused on the negative, but in actuality, I would argue that the worst part about capitalism is its focus on the profit motive, which means that there are prices that you can put on things, which makes sense. That idea itself is fine. The problem is when you start to get into important things and then you start to decide that the price is too expensive. The example that I gave was like the Green New Deal and fixing the environment. And the idea that there's too much money to fix the environment and literally save hundreds of thousands of lives and billions of dollars in property is mind-boggling to me. Like the idea that someone can be like, hey, there's too much, it costs too much to save the trees, is something that even to this day, I can't wrap my mind around.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay that the coral is bleaching at an alarming rate.
Can I
screw the bees?
I feel like I should say, like, so I am patriotic. I love the country that I live in.
America.
But I think that there are limitations that we're putting on ourselves when we're depending on slave owners that lived over 200 years ago to run our country in the best way possible.
Yeah, and the thing about the Constitution is it's supposed to be...
it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be able to amend it. Jefferson had the idea that no generation should be able to rule over the next generation.
Right.
He thought that you should have a constitutional convention every 20 years and basically come in and talk about, well, this didn't work. We should change it. Maybe not every 20 years, but maybe after 200 years, we should go, okay, this document's a little old. Maybe it needs some updating. Maybe it needs a facelift. Maybe it needs to not refer to blacks as less than human. You know, maybe our Constitution isn't the greatest thing that ever existed, and we could come up with something better. Not with the current administration, God no, but
I was about to say the guy that wants to drill in the ocean. Yeah.
We, the Trump with the best words, in order in order to form a goodly union.
Bigly.
I say we do this and do it right. The wall is there. Good. And that would be the Constitution if the Trump administration put it together. But no,
it would just be that meme of him or the gif of him destroying CNN. That would be our Constitution.
There's just, okay, so there is so much that like makes me want to beat my head against the table because we live in a country where the poor vote against their own interests.
Yes.
Where they hear a politician on stage say, oh, you know, those educated rich people or whatever, educated idiots are trying to take away your food stamps while they're the ones that are actually trying to take it away.
Yeah, they tend to not have as much funding in the rural areas, the not so heavily populated areas. So since they don't get funding, they don't get better education, and they're not exposed to other types of people. They're not exposed to really what capitalism is like. It's a bombarding system, but in terms of, you know, all the marketing, I mean, I can't get a moment's peace. But that's kind of one other thing that I wanted to touch on before we kind of wrap it up, because I know Luciano wanted to bring up some humanistic.
I think I've just ranted and gone crazy all night.
Yeah, but you totally had nothing to say about capitalism.
Well, that's the thing. Like I said, once I got into it, it's like, okay, well, there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and there's
It's almost like you're saying this should be a regular conversation humanists have.
It should be.
So that's a perfect segue, because I wanted to know what the humanist perspective of capitalism is and what we can do to change things for the better and actually do good for human beings.
There are good things about capitalism, and I'm not about to sit here and pretend otherwise. I feel like that's a common perspective that a lot of people do, but I do understand why it is that people hesitate to be like, hey, capitalism is good. Because in most cases, it's really not. When it comes to the things that really, 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 really matter, capitalism has a history of really just messing them up. Yeah. But if it comes to like minor things, like say entertainment, I feel like entertainment is an industry where capitalism just really, really, really shines. But one of the things that I think that humanists should get in the process of doing is working to find ways to limit the influence of capitalism and trying to inject humanism into critical industries and critical areas like education, like healthcare, like housing, like the things that need everyone and the things that everyone needs. Yeah. Unfortunately, the actual process of doing this is really difficult. And one of the big things it's going to require is a lot of humanists not just getting out and voting, because voting is literally kind of the least you could do politically. And it doesn't hurt, but we got to do more than just vote. One of the things we got to do is we got to work to identify people who want to make the system better, and we got to elect them. But part of that means figuring out who wants to be the people in the room where it happens, and then figuring out how to get them elected. Because in a lot of places, especially the places where this is really needed, being a humanist is not an electable quality.
No.
It's not something that helps you, even if you're a theistic humanist, which exist and need to be acknowledged. It's really important that people sit down and be like, hey, humanism isn't just secular. In my opinion, the best humanists are secular, and I'm unafraid to admit that. But
bias.
Humanism is something that exists in plenty of theists. And also, we can help make it exist in theists by being like, hey, let's sit down and have conversations with people who are at least interested in the ideas that we have, which is something that people like the three of us do a whole lot, which is good.
Well, and it was said in the chat, Luciano was not saying don't vote. He was saying vote, but also run and find people to run and get more active than just voting.
Yeah, and when you're about to go to the ballot box, make sure that you researched your candidates because, yeah.
And I would just like to point out that one of the values that America is based on is anti-capitalistic. And that's the idea that all men are created equal.
Yep.
That's not capitalism.
What about women?
Well, all women as well. Yes, I'm saying how it says it in the document. See, the document needs upgraded. Women can vote now too, and so can non-binary, and so can asexual and homosexual.
Yeah,
and everyone.
Yeah. I just want to say upgrade.
Upgrade. But voting, like, you got to vote. You got to realize how many things in our society that we love about a modern and working society that aren't capitalistic. Fire departments, police departments, emergency health care. You can go into an emergency room, and if you've been shot, they'll remove the bullet. Now, they might not do much else after that, but that's socialistic. Yeah, they'll give you a bill, but
Social Security,
Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps. And one thing, like, the poor are not lazy. When I was poor, I worked harder than I do now. I'm low middle class now, but I worked way harder when I was poor.
You have a large percentage of what they call the working poor that are working, but they also have to get assistance because they don't make enough money, even working full time.
Which brings up another great point. If you are a corporation that is paying your employees so low that they have to go out and get assistance,
Walmart,
you
should be paying that assistance.
Right?
And also, you should probably not exist.
Yeah.
Especially an organization as big as Walmart. There is no excuse on earth that a corporation that makes that much money cannot be paying every single one of its workers a genuine living wage. That is unacceptable, and a business that size does not deserve to exist.
And here's the deal. People will say, oh, well, you know, if your one job doesn't work, you can always get a second job. But here's what happens when you're poor. You take whatever hours the job gives you. And if you're working at Walmart, you might not have a set schedule, or McDonald's or something like that. You might not have a set schedule where one day you're working mornings and then the next day you come in and find out that the next week you're working evenings. Makes it kind of hard to work multiple jobs.
Yeah, it does.
So
plus you'll be making too much money.
Oh yeah, and then you make too much money, which cuts your benefits down so low that you're actually worse off than when you were working one job with benefits with the
I know.
There's so much about this country that is great, but there's also so much about this country that is just shit. And we need to work towards fixing the things that are shit. Like, if you had a little bit of shit on you right now, You would probably run to the bathroom and clean it off. This country has shit all over it, and we need to clean it up.
Also, any business that gets you to limit your hours or threatens to punish you for working too many hours because they don't want to give you benefits is a horrendous company. And a lot of people think that that doesn't exist. The problem is they do. I worked retail. I worked in a job where they were just like, hey, if you do this, if you work 40 hours or more, you're going to get punished.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the system right now is crazy as it is. It's just, I got a 25-cent raise last year, which gave me about $40 more a month. With that $40, it cut my ability to get any kind of help for healthcare. So the plan that was offered to me was around $300 a month. So $40 a month extra on my paycheck would have, I don't have healthcare right now because it would have consumed $260 more. It's insane.
Yeah, it has you running around in circles just to survive.
Yeah.
Well, any final thoughts before we conclude this?
I'm Batman.
You're Batman.
There probably should be a humanist like podcast or something that goes into these topics like with real depth.
Yeah.
I'm starting to do political live streams and like governmental live streams on my channel. Last week's was the first and it was very experimental, but I liked it and the people who attended enjoyed it. So I'm going to start doing that more regularly on select topics. Tomorrow I'm doing one on government shutdowns, which got a lot more personal for me when I found out, and I tweeted about this for anyone who follows me on Twitter. There are government agencies that are being pressured to take away money that's intended to go to Puerto Rico and give it to the president if the president decides to declare a state of emergency to try and get the money to build the wall. And I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow, but like I talk about a whole lot of government stuff on my Twitter, and I'm starting to get more into that on my YouTube, but everyone knows that political YouTube channels are kind of the worst.
But no one knows what it's like to be the bad man.
Well,
to be the sad man.
I think we do need to be having these discussions, especially so many of us consider ourselves to have a skeptical mindset, where we look at things deeper. Yet almost every day I'll see someone out there that claims to be a humanist, but is against almost everything that's humanist. Like secular humanism doesn't just mean you're an atheist. You don't become a humanist just by being an atheist. And I think some people out there act as if that's what happens.
I think that's something a lot of people need to hear.
Yeah.
Just being an atheist, you don't automatically care for your fellow man. And to answer Terry, no. Our Medicare is no. Our healthcare system is shit.
Yeah.
If you're very, very poor, you can get healthcare. If you're very, very rich, you can get amazing healthcare. If you're anywhere between higher, low class and high middle class, you're basically fucked. Which actually stifles capitalism.
Yep.
Because if working more and making something more of my life and getting better pay and a better job is going to equate to less, people aren't going to do it.
Mm. Well, one thing I worry about in particular is that we're allowing this consumer society to pretty much prime us to objectify ourselves in a way, more or less because we identify more with the things that we quote unquote own, and they end up kind of owning us in a way. And we don't find, I don't know, there doesn't seem to be much of an intimacy to moments anymore. People are on their phones and they're on the computer and they're watching some kind of screen, and they're not involved with one another like they used to be forced to do because they were bored to tears. But it just makes me kind of wonder about the, for lack of a better term, spirit of humanity.
I think we're getting better. Like I don't see it that like that. I'm not a technophobe. Like I see the increase in technology and social media and things as opening our worlds and opening our minds to ideas that we wouldn't have had 20, 30 years ago. But I was going to say, yeah, Lady Unicorn got you there. She said, kids these days, they're doing stuff like this right here.
But yeah, of course.
We're all looking at our screens and talking into mics and
yeah, I mean there's that, right? But there's also the dynamic of do I have the best thing? Do I have the latest iPhone? Do I have just this kind of watering down of the soul of humanity? And that's more or less what I mean.
I was gonna say I think we definitely need to have more of these conversations. Like, when we came into this conversation, I was like, I don't know if there's going to be anything that we'll talk about, because I think we're all going to agree that yes, we like capitalism. None of us here are communists or completely against capitalism. So I was like, there's not really much there. But as soon as you start talking about it, there's so much nuance that every single little facet could have its own show.
Yeah. Also, there's absolutely value in talking to humanists who are not capitalists. I know Krismer is one of them. And I know that there are a handful of other people I can think of, especially people on Twitter, who would be super down to have a conversation about like a post-capitalist society. And I think we're going to move in that direction, whether we like it or not. And whether or not the direction we move in is a good or bad one is up to us.
See, I question. Like, I don't want to put words into anyone's mouth. I question how much people who say they're against capitalism are actually against capitalism. Because we're all talking on electronic devices provided by capitalism. So I think maybe some people like less capitalism and more capitalism, but I don't know how you could be anti-capitalism really and be, to me, have a serious conversation, if that makes sense.
I understand that. My real issue with that is I deeply dislike the idea that only capitalism like spurs innovation. And it's because like there are societies, and there have been societies, where capitalism wasn't the system and people still invented things. You can have a discussion about like if capitalism is the most efficient like motivator of innovation. I think that's a real conversation. And I understand the point that you're trying to make, but I do feel like if there was someone who was a hard anti-capitalist here, I think they would be able to question that position itself a lot more effectively than I can. Because of the three of us here, I'm probably the one with the most concerns about capitalism, but even I wouldn't say that I'm like an anti-capitalist.
And I would like to, I don't think that capitalism is the only way that we get things created. I understand that capitalism is a system of government or a system of political thought that came out later. So we've gone through other things, and I think the best system is a mix.
Yes. Agreed.
I don't see us getting away from capitalism completely. Because like to me, like Emotionally Mimetic Psychopath said, the optimal anti-capitalist would become like the next Diogenes.
Yeah.
And I guess they're there, but
we'll look for them living in a tub or a barrel.
Yes.
Telling the emperor to move out of the sunlight.
Yeah. And I would like Chrismer is a great guy. I really like Chrismer. And I've had chats with him on my own channel. So like, I don't know, like he's also had some things that he said that I'm pretty sure is satire. The only good capitalist is a dead capitalist. He doesn't want to kill me. Chrismer loves me.
Oh. But yeah, I think there are different points of view, and there are a lot of good arguments from the Marxist kind of point of view that, you know, capitalism on its own is doomed to fail. So if you don't have protections in place, if you don't have a way of keeping some kind of order to this chaos, and it gets very chaotic when you're playing around with markets and you're bursting bubbles all over the fucking world and people are losing their fucking minds.
Well, and like I think like the thing, I'm sorry to take us off into this, like
tangents are good. Don't apologize for them.
Okay, so we have lived under a lot of deregulation. If you've lived past 1980, you don't really know an economy in the US that was decent capitalism. Post 1980, everything went insane. So like I could see someone being anti-unfettered capitalism. I think there are good things about capitalism that if you took the time to research them and see where they can be beneficial, and haven't been beneficial for 40 years, there's a lot that we need to get done in this country. Yeah, I don't know. I've gone on a tangent and I'm going to go back to being Batman. I like Batman.
Well, unless you have anything else to add, I think that's a good place to kind of end this. What do you got?
I do have something to add.
Yeah.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
Do you have to?
Is that your Batman?
No, it's not that I'm Batman. I am going to share it in the chat now. I am a cartoon.
Yes, you are.
That's true.
On Prophet of Zod's channel, I starred in one of his cartoons with Essence of Thought and Surus and KC on Is It Harsh Slavery? And it was a great video, so you should check that out. But that's all I had to add.
Maybe I should do collaborations.
That would be awesome. That was a funny, wonderful collab. I laughed my butt off. If y'all haven't seen it yet, go watch it, of course, after this stream.
Fortunately, the stream is probably just like 2 or 3 minutes from ending, so you'll be able to go watch it soon.
and it's I'm Bathman, not Batman. Bathman. I need a bath.
You do need a bath.
I'm stinky.
The stinky Iowan. Trending now on Twitter.
No, this has been a really good chat. I'm going to tell you, I did not see this chat going much of anywhere when we first started it. I was kind of joking with Snarky, like this is going to be nothing.
You were wrong and you're fake news.
I was wrong. So I admit I was wrong, Snarky.
Will you admit you're fake news?
I'm not fake
You're
news.
fake news.
So we're probably going to have more discussions in this vein. Hopefully I'll be around every once in a while. But also, there are a lot of people here who don't know who I am. Hi, I'm Luciano. Come check out my videos to see me talking about things in Spanish, talking about policy, and sometimes peace and conflict studies.
Wait. Now, in a live stream, I asked you how you pronounced your name, and you told me it was Luciano.
It is Luciano. I say
and
it
you
the
just
lazy
said
way.
it was Luciano. What the hell? What? if you can't pronounce your name right,
Capitalism values efficiency. Okay, I was being maximally capitalist.
okay, I got you.
Yeah, you gotta maximize your profits for your portfolio. I don't know.
Yeah.
So just gonna put this in my whatchamacallit. Oh god, Blackberry. It's in my Blackberry. So Godless Iowan, did you want to plug yourself?
I'd prefer you to plug me, but I'll say I'm the Godless Iowan. I'm back to being the Godless Iowan. There was never a philosophically godless. The Godless Iowan channel. You can come check me out. I debunk religion. I talk politics. I talk social issues. I'm the SJW that you love, I guess, because I have anti-SJWs that love me. But yeah, I do a whole lot. And I think everyone should subscribe to I'll just say Luckiano, since
Yeah.
we're mispronouncing his name. Luckiano's Logic. Go and pronounce the Luckiano's Logic. He's almost at 300 and deserves more subs.
Definitely do that. Well, that was the thing.
Heck yeah.
I'm pretty sure that everyone's subscribed to the Godless Iowan.
Better be.
And to all those imposters out there, they're all paid by George Soros. So I just wanted to bring that up. Oops, I opened the wrong thing. I wanted to share your YouTube channel in the chat, but I keep clicking on the wrong thing.
Mine or Luciano's?
Luciano.
Oh, well, I don't care if you share his.
What if I care?
See, sharing is caring.
Thanks, guys. Also, Christy shared it. Thanks, Christy.
Yeah.
Christy was on Wonder Lady's channel earlier today. If you don't know who she is, you should go check her out and maybe help her get a computer.
Yeah, do the thing.
I don't have the link offhand, although someone in the chat probably does. But if you have the link to her PayPal, share that link.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Luciano. And what's this philosoph? The Iowan
Godless
guy.
Iowan. Godless.
Not the real Godless Iowan, the unreal one.
Listen, motherfuckers, I'm Godless Iowan.
Anyway, thank you all in the chat for joining us. This has been a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to having more like this. So have a good night, y'all. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.